In my first vlog, I had mentioned that I am an amateur filmmaker. And so today I kind of wanted to get a little more in depth about that and what it's like. It kind of started out when I was all really little. As I mentioned last time, I always mentioned that I wanted to be either a cake baker or a movie maker. And back then, I think it was more of kind of like a starstruck thing for me. Just, when I was young, it was like, I want to be famous, you know, that whole, everyone goes to that point at some time in their life. Anyway, as I got older, I found that I was really good with art. But not just like drawing art, but like things I could actually do, artwork that I could actually work with my hands with, like pottery or filmmaking, wood shop. I was really good in that class. But when it came to film, that's when I realized I really just could open up and just become alive, pretty much. I could create all these different fantasy worlds and stuff. I mean, seriously, your imagination can go wild in film. It's just an exhilarating experience. Now, I didn't have my own camera growing up, even though I really wanted one. We could never afford it. But as I got older and I went to high school, this is where the Warrior Update comes into play. I got to go into a television productions class, and we had to take television productions 1 before we could ever go into television productions 2, which is the class that runs the Warrior Update. So in the first class, we had to take just 1 semester's worth of that, and we got to do our own little films. We had to study how the camera works, how it takes the pictures, and then we got to do like little storyboards, make an idea about a small little film we wanted to do. At first we just did basics like shots of people just walking around the halls of the campus or up and down stairs. There was no real story plot to them. It was just mainly films to show the basic, they were just mainly small little films to show that we got at least the basics of film, of the camera and how to film different shots and angles. They weren't the most fun, but as the semester was going on, we got to get a little more creative. We got to actually start getting a little more story plots into our little short films. We got to start adding music and voiceovers in the background. Eventually, we got to do this little commercial thing where we got to take a beverage drink of our choice, any drink at all. It could even be one that we made up, and we had to make like a little 30-second commercial about that soda drink. I just chose to do Pepsi because I'm not creative to make my own drink. A lot of kids in my school love Pepsi, so I could just bribe them with a Pepsi to help me with the filming, to kind of like be actors and stuff. That was a great time. That was actually kind of fun. And I was able to keep all of my little short films that I made in that class. But again, like I mentioned in the last vlog, they were on those little mini tapes, and I don't have a converter for that, so maybe someday I will. Or at least a video camera that can hold the tapes, and so I can get like a FireWire or a USB cable to convert it all. Do that, but right now it's just pretty much stuck where it is. But it was fun being in that class, and eventually by the end of the semester for TV Pro 1, we had to do a rather fairly big, like 3 to 5 minute little video. It could be like a music video or another little short story. Everyone in my class just did a quick music video because I don't know, we just didn't have the time, or we were just too lazy to actually make up an actual skit and story plot, or in my case I just didn't have enough people who were willing to act with me for that one. But I sure hope someday I get to show you all of those videos, because I actually had a very fun time making them. They were great. Being in television productions was honestly probably the best experience in my life. Honestly, there was no feeling greater than when I could hold a camera in my hands and just be like, action! And sometimes I'd just get the camera on a tripod and I'd start filming myself. Well, actually, that's pretty much what I did most of the time. Lonely, I'm Mr. Lonely. But it was honestly a very fun time. I'm really glad I chose that class, and I'm really glad I went to TV Pro after that. Because once we kind of graduated from TV Pro 1, that's when we got the choice to go to TV Pro 2. And I did that the second half of my junior year. The first half, that was what my TV Pro 1 year. And then all of my senior year. It was fantastic. Once we got into TV Pro 2, that's when the game was really stepped up, because everything we shot, it wasn't going to be something that was only between my class and the teacher. Okay, every assignment we did, it was going up on the Weekly Warrior Update where the whole school could see it on Friday. We took Mondays to talk about what we wanted to shoot, what we wanted on the newscast, and then when we figured out who's going to do what packages, who's going to film what, and who's going to do the audio for the week, or who's going to be behind the camera or even in front of the camera, who's going to be the teleprompter, the graphics person. Now, a lot of people probably don't think that there's a whole lot going on with television and movie, but in truth, there is a whole entire crew behind those cameras. What you see on the television, it's only the tip of the iceberg. Seriously. It's not just a guy in front of a desk with a camera pointed at him with a guy behind the camera. It's so much more than that. You got an entire team working behind you. In a separate room, actually, but you get what I'm saying here. Anyway, sometimes we wouldn't have news packages just based on what's going on in the school. Sometimes we would go out into the town and get interviews with like certain restaurants, places around town that have been known for supporting local entertainment that a lot of the kids could go to. And we would actually interview some of the people who ran these restaurants and other places that we went to. But it was always fun. It was like a whole new experience each and every week, and I was so glad to be a part of that. Now, granted, it wasn't like trying to make a movie, but it was still fun to sometimes just go around the campus, particularly at lunchtime, because sometimes we would have these segments in our newscast where we would just randomly interview a bunch of people for an on-the-street point of view with certain news stories. Like, sometimes we just talk about the coming spring and what students around campus were planning to do, or for the upcoming summer. And we would just be like, we'd go around with a camera with a microphone attached to it, and we'd just be like, would you mind telling me what your spring plans are? What do you think people should do during the spring? And sometimes we'd have slightly more serious subjects, sometimes it would just be funny, and the reactions from the students was just the same. Some were serious, some were funny, and some were just wacko crazy. But it's fun. You get to actually communicate with people you don't really know, perhaps, as well. I mean, you seriously just go walking around, and anyone you see, you just slightly stop and ask them if they want to be recorded first, because if they don't, that's the most important thing. If they don't want to be recorded, then you should always respect that. But it was fun to see what other students would say And that was part of the fun of it. It was like the mystery of interviewing. Like sometimes you would get students who would be like, well, spring is the most fun time. You don't have to wear all the winter coats anymore, and you can just shed them off. You can just shed off the heavy clothing and wear something more light and start planning for the beach as summer rolls around. And then you would get the students who would just give wacky answers. Like, I remember this one kid we interviewed. He was like, the warm weather because the girls get to wear the short skirts. So ladies, make them short. We did have to cut off a few interviews because they just weren't school appropriate. When we weren't shooting B-roll, or we got everything we needed to, and we just needed to collaborate it all together, we were allowed to stay late on Thursday nights, editing all of everything that we shot throughout the week. And if we weren't editing, then we were typing up lines for what we called talent. The people who are in front of the cameras, like our anchorman, our sports guy, and an entertainment segment. The entertainment segment was fun, mainly because I was the one who was always in front of the camera for that one. On Thursday nights, I had to take the newspaper and look up everything that was going on, like live concerts, pretty much live concerts, who was playing, maybe the style of music if it was mentioned that the band was playing. And then I always got to finish it off with the movies, with the new movies that were coming in to our movie theater. And I got to name them, maybe talk a little bit about what they were about. But the best part was I got to take the trailers of all the movies that were coming out that weekend and then edit them all together within a 30 to 45 seconds time frame. It got a little tricky sometimes. Again, like when he had four movies coming out in the same weekend, which didn't happen often, thankfully, but it wasn't always easy taking these like 2, sometimes 3-minute trailers and then shaving them all together into like your average 30-second TV spot. But I did it well, and in fact, a lot of people loved how I did it. They loved my vocal projection that I had. They said I was very clear and loud, which in film, when you have a camera in front of your face, you do want to try to be as loud as possible. Well, not like screaming, screeching loud, but when you're just regularly talking, you want to be clear, especially when you're doing a newscast. Because you don't want people listening on the news not being able to understand what they're saying. But apparently, I found out later that people loved me so much on the Warrior Update that I actually started gaining a fan base at the school. I would just be walking down the hallways and people would stop me and be like, hey, you're the girl on the Warrior Update. You are awesome, man. You're my favorite. And one kid even came up to me, hugged me randomly, and said, I'm your #1 fan. I gotta tell you, it was a little creepy getting hugged by this guy, but then I found out later that he was a guy that just kind of hugged everybody. I personally called him creepy happy guy. He was always nice to have around, but he was just creepy. Anyway, we got to do this each and every week, and it was always just fun. I learned a lot in my 2 years of TV productions class. I know we mainly did news stories, but we got to learn different angles. We got to learn how to film at different angles with the camera and all these different camera tricks and editing. Whether it's simply interviewing other people for a news package or directing them for an actual short film, the experience is still the same. It's still a wonderful experience to be able to get your imagination just flowing. You can make whatever types of films you want in any genre because they're yours. But that's pretty much my whole filming story for now. And hopefully there's more to come. and I hope that you guys get to see that. But for now, I've pretty much said everything I need to say. So, later.